If you've got a visible tattoo, we're going to see it. We'll probably ask you a competency-based question. Please do not tell that recruiter it's because you can't.
Hi sailors, welcome back to Cruising as Crew. Today I am here with Sophie, who is a recruiter for P&O and Cunard. So she's going to be giving us some interview tips and ways to impress the recruiter when you have your interview for whatever cruise line you choose to go for. So hi Sophie.
Hi Lucy.
So first question. So what company do you work for?
I worked for Carnival UK, so I used to recruit for Cunard and P&O Cruises.
So what was your job title?
So I was a resourcing and onboarding consultant.
So can you please go into detail about what you were responsible for?
The department that I looked after, which was hotel operations. So that is literally everything from working with your stakeholders to understand how many people you need to recruit, when you need them to join, advertising the role, working to post it on job boards, social media, doing all of that advertisement, then bringing them through to interview. So depending on whether that's just one interview with you, whether it's a couple of interviews with stakeholders and things. So arranging all of that, actioning the interviews, giving feedback, and then obviously offering the position and then taking them through the onboarding process.
You said you hire people in the hotel department. Was that every single role?
I was personally responsible for hotel operations, so that is your reception, crew office, admin officers, future sales and shore-ex were the main departments that I looked after. But I have looked after restaurant, bars, galley, I've done crew office, I've done HR. At one point or another, I've pretty much touched every role on a cruise ship that's not done by an agency. So things like photogs, casino, shop staff, spa staff are all dealt with by a recruitment agency.
Can you please go through what a manning agent is?
So a manning agent is basically I guess it's a bit like a recruitment agency.
Right.
So there are two main ones that most people deal with. In fact, there's three, that's a lie. For India, the manning agent that would be used would be Carnival, so CSSI. In the Philippines, for P&O Cruises, it's Magsaysay. And for Cunard, it's Singer. And they are basically a recruitment agency, a manning agency, whatever you might want to call them. They look after a number of cruise operations. So if you go on CSSI's website, you'll see that they are recruiting for Cunard, P&O, Virgin Voyages, Holland America Line, all different cruise lines. And they basically are responsible for those Indian or Filipino crew members. So that's kind of how a manning operation works.
How is the process different if you go with a manning agent rather than directly through the company?
So if you go through a manning agent, what you'll find is that you don't tend to deal with the direct recruiters within the cruise industry. Mm-hmm. You deal with your recruiter and onboarder with the manning agent. And so you kind of belong to them, you're owned by them until that day that you step on board that ship, and then you kind of migrate over to the cruise line themselves. Any queries that you've got around your contract, your pay, your benefits, anything like that all goes through your manning agent, including things like your rotations. All of those queries would go through your manning agent rather than through the cruise line themselves.
Oh, okay, so they basically do the same job that you do, but why is it that people from certain countries have to use manning agents?
It's just the volume of it more than anything. So you'll find that they tend to look after the positions that have a significant amount more volume than we as a function would have been able to handle. So generally it's a lot of the kind of entry-level positions, particularly within things like food and beverage, where, we might look for 2 restaurant managers, say, but they might be looking for sort of 200 waiters across all the brands that they look after.
What is the minimum age to be hired?
So for P&O Cruises it's 18 and for Cunard it is 21, and the difference is just due to the fact that Cunard tends to be in American waters more, so you have to be a minimum of 21 because of the bar team needing to be at least 21 to be able to serve alcohol. So
if someone is 18 and they want to work on cruise ships, they can apply for any job within P&O UK?
Yeah, definitely. So any job, yeah, as long as you're a minimum of 18. And like I say, for Cunard it is 21, but if say you were 20 and you're going to be 21 in 3-4 months' time, don't let that put you off applying, because by the time you've gone through the process, by the time you're ready to be on board, you're probably going to be 21 anyway.
That's really interesting. I thought it was 21 across the board.
I assumed it would be too when I first kind of started, but yeah, 18.
Does Cunard and P&O offer graduate schemes? And if so, can you please go into detail about what they are? Is it worth doing one?
Yeah, so there are lots of different schemes that are offered. So there's a maritime hotel and there was a HR one, but I don't think that's run anymore. Obviously this year I don't think that they're going to be run because ultimately we haven't actually been able to finalise those people who are on the scheme at the moment, they haven't been able to fulfil their rotations. But essentially what happens is you go through a full assessment day, so it's quite an intense recruitment process. They are very sought after positions. We do have literally thousands of applications for each graduate scheme. It's a really tough scheme to get onto. It's an amazing scheme. You do a set of rotations, so you will go on board and you'll be placed into a role where essentially you learn about that department. So you could be placed in the crew office, you could be placed in food and beverage, you could be placed on reception. And then at the end of that scheme, you have the opportunity then to interview for a position on board. So we've got quite a few people who are on Cunard now who started through graduate schemes, have worked their way up, done rotations, found where their niche is on board. And it's a great opportunity, if you know you want to work on a cruise ship but you're not really sure kind of what you want to do, or it's a really great way to be able to test run departments and kind of be like, that's not for me, that one is for me, or kind of figure out where your niche is. And people generally do tend to find they either absolutely love a department and they're like, this is my department, this is where I want to be, or they'll finish a rotation and be like, please never put me back in that department, that is not for me.
And how do you apply for them? Is it on the website?
Yep, so just on the website is normal. So they're normally advertised around August, September time. So that's for your people that would graduate the next year. So it's the start of your last academic year of university is when you should be applying for a graduate scheme.
And does it matter what degree you've done?
No, not at all. So
will candidates need to pass an English exam to be hired?
Yes. So anyone who is not British, Irish, American, Canadian, Australian or from New Zealand will have to do Marlin's English language test. The score that you need to get to pass will depend on the role that you're doing. Those who are front of house will need a slightly higher, and I think if I'm right in saying, I think a doctor has to score 100% on the test. There's lots of different elements of it. So there's like a reading task, a comprehension task, a listening task, and you just do it all online on a computer. With Carnival it costs $11, but you don't pay for that upfront. Carnival basically pay it for you, and then in your first month's salary you'll see a deduction for $11, and it's just to cover the cost of that test.
Are visible tattoos a problem?
So it depends on the cruise line really. So at Carnival, even in the time that I was there, the policy changed quite significantly. So when I first began 3.5 years ago, you couldn't have any visible tattoos at all. It then changed to as long as it was the size of a credit card, and then eventually by the time I left it was absolutely fine as long as they weren't offensive and that they weren't on your hand, your face or your neck. The one thing I will just say is please just don't lie on your application and pretend that you don't have them. I have had that, and someone got on board and had a massive tattoo that was visible all on her neck, and she was asked to leave that day. So she'd flown all the way over to join the ship and was asked to leave that day. So she literally walked up the gangway, walked back down again about an hour later. So it's not worth lying. If you've got a visible tattoo, we're going to see it at one point.
Yeah.
So don't bother lying about it, because your recruiter is going to pick up, someone's going to pick up at one point. Some cruise lines are still super strict about it, and others, Virgin for instance, absolutely fine. Have what you want where you want, and it's absolutely fine. It just depends on the cruise line and what their kind of standards are.
So after you've hired someone, will Carnival pay for their flights to the ship, their medical, their seaman's book, their C1D visa? Does Carnival cover that, or will the candidate have to pay for that themselves?
So initially they have to pay for it themselves. So apart from flight is completely included and funded entirely by Carnival. So your medical, your discharge book, your visa, all of that you initially pay up front. And what I would always say to people is keep hold of those receipts, because once you are on board, you can go to your crew office and say, I'd like to expense these back, and then the company will expense them back for you. Not all companies do this. So it's always worth just asking your recruiter and just saying, do I have to front these costs, because it can be expensive, it can add up.
When I first joined ships, I had to pay for everything myself, and it's a lot of money to get on board, like a lot of money. And especially like that girl who had the tattoo, for example, I mean, she would have paid for all of that herself and then got sent home. So she may as well have thrown all that money in the bin.
And they're worthless then, because...
Yeah, what else are you going to do with a seaman's book?
Exactly, and they're expensive, and like your medical, for instance, is only valid for so long. So even if you were to go and get a job somewhere else, in the time it takes you to maybe find that, interview for it, get on board with them, you might find that by the time you get on board, it's expired anyway, and you just go and get another one anyway.
Yeah, or you need a different one for that.
Exactly, and so it just adds up.
Now we'll go into talking about the interview process. So when people are having an interview, Are there any big mistakes that you see people make?
The first thing for me is understanding it is not a holiday. So when I ask somebody why is it that you want to work on a cruise ship, please do not tell that recruiter it's because you can't wait to see the world. We all want to travel, we all want to see the world, but on a cruise ship sometimes you see that port from a porthole and that's the only way that you see it. You are there to work, it's hard work. So yeah, by telling me that you really want to work for us because you're really excited to go travelling doesn't sell you very well.
Okay.
The other thing is make sure that you've researched the cruise line and make sure that you've researched the correct cruise line. So if I had a penny for how many times that I've been told, you know, when I've said, why do you want to work for Cunard? And people say, oh, because Carnival Cruise Lines are the biggest cruise line in America.
Right.
They are, correct. But you're interviewing.
Why do you want to work for Cunard? Oh no!
So I get it, it's a bit confusing, especially with Carnival, because it's the Carnival Corporation, then you've got lots of different brands that, you know, all kind of mix into one, but just make sure you research the correct cruise line.
Right.
But yeah, so they're kind of, I would say, my two biggest watch outs to make sure you don't do it in an interview.
So of course you interview people for all different positions on board, but are there like key qualities that you look for in someone? Yeah,
definitely. So for me, it's always, as I say, being knowledgeable about the line is always so important. Every cruise line is so different. You know, so kind of what you might look for somebody to join Cunard might be completely different to what you would look for somebody to join P&O. But it's about making sure that, you know, you understand the cruise line, you adapt your answers to suit the cruise line in a way. Like I say, people that understand it's not a holiday, it's hard work. So you're always looking for people that understand that, are hardworking, who are resilient. Working on a cruise ship, as much as it is an amazing experience, it's really hard work. And you'll know, you know, you miss weddings, you miss parties, you miss Christmas sometimes. You miss out on a lot. You gain a lot too, don't get me wrong, but you do miss out on a lot. You miss out on a lot of home life. You're away for sometimes 3, 6, 9 months at a time. So it's about making sure that people are resilient, they understand that, they're hardworking. And I always look for people that, regardless of what role you do on a ship, your role will always impact the guest in some way, regardless of what you do. Even if you don't speak to a guest every day, you know, even if you're working downstairs in the crew mess, by making sure that you give a great service to the crew when you serve them their food means that they're going to have a better day, they're going to be happier, they're going to be more fulfilled, so then they're going to be happier when they're with the guests. So everything impacts the guest in one way or another. So you're always looking for those people that kind of understand that and get that actually you're part of a cog in a part of a big operation. And that, yeah, people that just kind of want to be there to give the guests a great experience. You're there to make their holiday.
Is it necessary that people have experience in the hotel industry to work on a cruise ship?
The advert will always tell you what you kind of need. So it might say that you need 1 to 2 years experience. It might say that you need 3 to 5. And again, it will depend. So for instance, with P&O Cruises, you kind of look for more kind of 3 or 4 star hotels. For Cunard, you look for 5-star hotels. It will be advertised to you on the job description.
So if someone has, let's say, just left school, they know that, you know, they want to work on cruise ships, it's something that they want to do in the future. They aren't necessarily sure about what they want to do on board, but they know that that's something they'd like to go into. What would you advise them to do before they start their cruise ship career?
Any kind of position with guests will give you that guest experience. I remember one time we were flying home from Manchester Airport and we were in a restaurant and there was a gentleman there that served us. He was so fantastic, so wonderful, really, really personal, great guy. And one of us gave him a business card and we ended up recruiting him to work in reception. He'd never worked in a hotel in his life, but he gave such a good experience and such good customer service that we were like, you'd be great at that. So you don't necessarily have to have had, you know, like for like experience. There are lots of different roles that can give you really transferable skills, but just get as much experience as you can and then, yeah, go for it.
So would you please give me some examples of the questions you would ask during an interview?
Most recruiters will probably ask you a competency-based question. We love a competency-based question. So things like, could you tell me about a time when you did X, Y, and Z?
Right, okay.
So the easiest way to think about this as an interviewee is think about it as a story. So tell it like a story. So literally tell me the beginning, the middle, the end. So for instance, tell me about a time when you dealt with a particularly difficult situation. What was the situation? Why was it difficult? What did you do? What was the outcome? What did you learn? The job description and the advert will give you an indication as to the things that you'll probably be asked. So read it. And what the recruiter is essentially looking for is for you to be able to demonstrate that you can work under pressure, you can think outside the box, you can make resolutions and all of that, whilst making sure that the guest is your priority. The other thing you'll probably, like I say, be asked is, why do you want to work for us? Kind of
Not
standard.
to travel. Not to travel.
Not to travel and see the world. It's because you want to deliver the most exceptional guest service whilst travelling the world. And a lot of the time as well, you'll be asked about things like values around the company. So have a quick look. Most companies will have a set of values or a set of a mission statement or something like that. And you might be asked to kind of explain how you feel about that, or an example of a time when you've delivered something around their values. So for example, at Cunard, we would quite often ask people, tell me about a time when you did something that made you proud, because proud was one of our values.
Okay. Can you tell me something that an applicant could do to really stand out amongst the crowd?
Your CV is the first thing that a recruiter's going to look at. I would always suggest that make sure your CV is relevant for the role that you are applying for. Don't just use one CV for every single position that you apply for. Adapt your CV. If you've got a personal statement at the top or somewhere in your CV, adapt it to fit the role that you're applying for, because that will, as a recruiter, you'll look at that and think, they read the job description, they know what it's about, they look good. I also had once somebody who went and took all the Cunard branding and literally branded their CV as a Cunard document, and it was amazing. And saw it I was at a jobs fair actually, and saw it in amongst obviously loads of documents that I get at jobs fairs, and was like, oh, this is one of our, no, this isn't actually one of our documents, this is a candidate's. And it made me straight away be like, I'm going to call him.
So basically, just the more you show that you want the job, the more you're going to stand out.
Exactly.
And same in the interview, I suppose. Like, the more research you've done about the company shows that you want the job, and probably get it. After the interview, after they've been offered the job, I guess then they will have to start getting all their documents together. So how long does it normally take, and how much can they expect to spend?
At Carnival in particular, you'll get two different types of offer that are made to you. So one is either for a talent pool offer, or one is to go through the onboarding process. So if you're a talent pool offer, what it means is that they don't have a position at the moment for you, but you have been successful. So kind of hang fire, great news, we just don't have anything for you yet. At that point, we wouldn't necessarily say, right, start the onboarding process, because like we said, those documents do run out. They're expensive, and we might not have a position, say, for another 6-12 months. Your recruiter will again tell you what type of offer that has been made to you. So if you're made an offer with onboarding, what that will mean is that then they'll start you through the onboarding process. So you'll get given your offer, you'll start then getting details of how to apply for those documents and start going through that process. Most people takes it can be from anywhere from about 4 weeks up to about 6 months. And the thing that normally holds most people up is the US visa. And that's just because you need to have an appointment at your local US consulate. So it depends on how busy they are as to how quickly you can get there, see someone, send your passport off and get your passport back. Also, top tip for US consulates, always pick the first appointment of the day. They are always running behind. My sister, for instance, she went to go and get hers. She had an appointment in the afternoon, couldn't actually then be seen that day and had to go back the next day. They actually ran out of time to see her. Yeah, so always get the first appointment of the day. In terms of costings, so a US visa is $160. A medical is anywhere from £40 to £90, again dependent on where you're based. Siemens Discharge Book, I actually can't remember how much that is.
I think I paid about 40 for mine.
Again, that's one of the ones that you can just claim back anyway. So
there's no other documents that you need to get, is there? Just Siemens book, medical, visa. Obviously, you would have a passport.
CCWs, but we went through that.
Oh,
so.
yeah. Have you ever had to advise people to get another medical, or is it mostly ENG1 medicals?
So it depends on where you're based. So if you're from the UK, 99.9% of the time an ENG1 is fine. Other countries do require different medicals, but what will happen is your onboarding team will let you know the document that you need to get. Other thing I would just say is categorically, please don't pay for a medical until you've been told which medical to do. Again, you might think, oh, this is the medical that I need, spend that money, and it's actually not the right one, and then we won't reimburse you for that because you got the wrong document. It has happened on many occasions.
Yeah.
You know, people think, oh, I'll be really proactive, and it's a great thought process. But if you're not getting the right documents, you're just going to cause yourself more money. But yeah, 9 times out of 10, an ENG one is probably the right one.
But just hold fire and wait for the instruction. I've always kind of advised people not to quit their job until they've like got a joining date, because I know so many people who are like, right, I've quit my job and now I'm going to apply for the cruise ships, and I'm like, but you're probably going to be waiting for like 6 months before you actually get on board, because it just takes so long.
I've always said, so whenever I've made an offer, I've always said, unless you know you're recruiting for an exact gap on an exact date on a ship. So I would always say to people, categorically, do not hand in your notice until I tell you to. Because otherwise you can end up without a job and you're sat at home waiting with all your documents ready to go, and we don't have a joining date for you. And it has happened, people have done it. And I know Carnival do now write it in the offer, so that it says actually in the offer, do not hand your notice in until we tell you. And I get it, it's difficult because, you know, you might have a notice period, but just tell your recruiter that. When I'm working with the planners to look at what's our forecast for the next 6 months, year, whatever, I can say, okay, well, great, because I've got candidate A and they can't join for another 6 months, so could we pencil them in for this date? And then I can kind of work that notice period into my plans, and it's fine.
So obviously there's so many jobs on board. Are you able to move around within the company?
One of the heads of departments at one of the Horns on Cunard, she's Filipino.
Oh, brilliant. Okay.
Yeah, she literally started as a buffet steward, so she's like worked her way up massively.
Yeah.
Both in fact, funnily enough, the 2 female Horns on Cunard both started as buffet stewards. So it's really rewarding because you can see people that actually like really build their careers.
Yeah.
If you want to develop a career at sea, there are so many options to do it.
Yeah.
People, I think, have this concept that like if you start as a waiter, you can only go through food and beverage, and there's no way you can move to another department. But actually, we have tons of people, especially that come from concession.
Right. Yeah.
That move over to direct.
Yeah.
I've lost count of the amount of people that we've had from spa, shops, casino.
That's it. I mean, it's so flexible as well. Like you said, you can go on as one role and then end up being something completely different that you didn't even know you wanted to do before you started. So what advice would you give to someone applying for a cruise ship job? I mean, I know that you've already given us the advice, but have you got any like cherry on top of the cake advice?
Do it. It's an amazing experience, you know. I've not worked on the ship myself, but I've been lucky enough to work with loads and loads of people across the years that have, you know, and wouldn't dream of doing anything else.
Well, thank you so much for answering all of those questions. I think we've all learnt something from that. I know I have. But thank you guys for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, then you know what to do. Please leave a comment and press like. If you still have questions, then you can leave them in the comments down below, or you can DM me over on Instagram. And if I don't know the answer, I will ask Sophie. But yeah, thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video, guys. Bye!